Hello and welcome to TrackVia's webinar on extending your ERP with low code. To start out, we have just a few housekeeping details that we'd like to go over. You've started in listen-only mode, and we recommend that you stay in that so people can listen to the webinar. If you do have any questions, please submit them through the chat window, and we will try to get to them after the presentation, and those that we don't get to, we'll follow up with you on. The webinar is being recorded, and we'll send you a follow-up email with that recording within 48 hours. With that, we will turn it over to our experts here, Roger Moffett with TrackVia's channel program, and he will get us going.
Hello, everybody. Grateful that you're online right now. We were chatting with WLL Plastics, about 5-6 weeks ago, and about how they were integrating and some of the decisions they made to go from to how they work with an ERP and how they use TrackVia, and it just seemed like a great discussion that I wanted to share out with a broad variety. I'm Roger Moffett. I represent channels for TrackVia, but we have channel partners on the line, or potential partners. We have partners, and we have customers and prospects. So we just have a great variety, but we think the content is great, and I love to share that conversation with Jake Frederick, who runs infrastructure. He's the infrastructure principal analyst at WL Plastics, and his cohort Bradley Crimmen is also there. Bradley, wave so we know who's who. There we go. and they together have kind of put together a pretty robust IT system there at WLL Plastics, and I thought, let's let them share. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to you gentlemen, and I'll try to stay out of your way and not interject too much. We will probably be answering most questions towards the end of the presentation, but go ahead and put them right into the chat window or into the questions, and so that we kind of log them in. And gentlemen, go.
All right, thanks, Roger. So this is Brad, who is my boss. I'm Jake, and we're just going to kind of talk a little bit through our process going through ERP and extending our ERP with low code. I mean, obviously we're talking about the TrackVia platform since TrackVia invited us. I'm just kind of giving an overview of just kind of where we're at, what today's agenda is, just kind of talk a little bit about our process, what we are, where we ran into with the ERP gaps, what options we considered, obviously the low code solutions, why we're here, the integrations about how it all kind of works together, and just what our vision is a little bit moving forward here. So just want to introduce a little bit about what we do. We're a manufacturing firm. We have 8 locations plus our corporate location here. We make pipe. That's some of the stuff that you see on the side of the road with conduit is one of our products. We're in all sorts of different markets between water, oil, and gas. And I'll let Brad talk a little bit about the systems with our ERP.
Yeah, want to go forward or get share? So yeah, so just kind of going back to kind of the agenda. The first thing we're going to talk about a little bit is just from the ERP side of things. So we're like a lot of growing companies. About 10 years ago or so, we started down the path of trying to select an ERP to really kind of modernize, capture, or support the growth that we as a company were going through. So we spent a bit of time, evaluating different solutions. We ended up going with a software as a service based ERP, so cloud-based. So it's not one of these big on-premise behemoth applications, but it's an ERP nonetheless. So what we kind of went through that whole process of selecting an ERP is, there's a lot of business process change that goes into it. There's a lot of master data cleanup. There's a lot of, just kind of figuring out what we do and redefining it so we can make the right selection. So from there, if you want to go ahead and advance it here. So what we found is probably what everybody finds, as they go through this process, is oftentimes there are gaps between what the ERP system offers either kind of off the shelf or through the implementation process, and what you actually do as a business. You know, we were definitely right there with everybody else. There were some gaps, some big, some small, and you know, I think it's just one of those things that's unavoidable. And anybody who's gone through this process, you know, they should relate to that process. And so identifying those gaps and understanding what they are, you know, is really kind of a big part of that. So over here. So what, you know, kind of what you find with these ERPs, especially something like what we went with, which is more of a cloud software as a service, multi-tenant ERP, is that, you know, especially the version that we went with, you know, we'd be happy to share some of that information, you know, kind of after the fact. We kind of wanted to keep this as agnostic as possible when we're talking about ERPs. But what we found with our version is it was meant more to be kind of a suite in a box, is the way that it's described, you know, in the marketplace. And so there are a lot of kind of canned business processes that fit most businesses. And so what you find is, you know, most of these ERPs, especially the cloud-based or software as a service, suite in a box type of ERPs, is they're designed around general concepts and general applications. And so, you know, for us, you know, just kind of going through that that whole process, you know, you definitely find that, you know, some of the processes work fairly well, but there are small enhancements that you need to make, or there are, you know, things that you need to interject into the standard as is workflow, you know, to really fit your needs. So that was kind of, you know, the process that we went through a little bit in the first with selecting the ERP, and then as we, you know, got to use the ERP, implemented it, you know, started down that path. You know, some of those gaps, you know, start to prove out to be pretty significant or pretty important that we need to close. And so that's kind of where we started after implementing the ERP to starting to look, you know, to fill those gaps and to find something to help us out in that regard.
Well, you were talking earlier too that it's not unique to our ERP system, and even our version of SAP. As you've gone to different conferences, as you've been around other SAP customers, it's kind of universal that there's a gap here or there that is not filled by just the SAP system.
Yeah, they weren't SAP necessarily wasn't designed for WLL plastics and the complications of 8 locations and the volumes and the materials and everything else you have to handle, right? Makes sense.
And so, you know, with that, we kind of had to figure out what we do to fill those gaps. And for the longest time, Brad and I were kind of separate in, you know, different silos, where I was more on the infrastructure side, he was more on the software side. And in the process with some of this, we merged a little bit more, just some organizational changes. So as we've gone down the path, Brad was actually responsible for helping implement our first TrackVia application. And through that process, we considered, or I should say, Brad considered, you know, we as a company considered several options. And this isn't particular to, you know, one area of our business. Is in between maintenance, quality, you know, several different areas of our business. We've had to consider how to fill those gaps. And so we've kind of talked about ERP customization or add-ons to the ERP, which oftentimes is found was way over our needs, was way too expensive for the function that it fit. Custom developed application, Brad, you've had more experience in that side with our company. We've had a couple of custom developed applications. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, so, I mean, I'd actually probably take it just a step back here, you know, because, you know, like you're talking about the customization. So these are really kind of all the options, like Jake was mentioning, that we considered to bridge some of the gaps. And, you know, I think we've kind of dabbled in just about all of these things. I think, you know, that's kind of the, you know, kind of what you go throughout this process. But, you know, as Jake was mentioning, you know, for us, the ERP customization, especially on a cloud software multi-tenant environment, there's actually not a whole lot of customization you can do. And most of the customization that you that is available to you might only be, small enhancements to a workflow, but you can't drastically alter that workflow. So, for some of these things, as we'll get into some more specific examples, ERP customization really kind of wasn't on the table, or it's a hard one to work into your portfolio because it is expensive and it is limited. So then the custom developed applications, we've definitely gone down that road. So as a manufacturer, manufacturing scheduling is a very important topic. What we found is our version of SAP doesn't really fit the way that we do it. So we've gone down that path with the custom developed application for scheduling, and it has its pros and cons. Again, it works, but it definitely has some challenges. The main challenge I think that we have is even though we're developing the application, we aren't in control of the whole process. You've got external participants and external timelines that affect how you can release updates and manage the system. And then, the third option is to, do you actually change your business process to meet how it works in the ERP or in your system of record? And that one's also, kind of that double-edged sword too, because it might sound like it's what should happen, but it's very hard a lot of times to change process, especially in an established company like ours. We've been in operation for, over a decade at many locations before we implemented a company-wide ERP system. So harmonizing all of those business processes, making those changes in line with the ERP is a hard thing. And then of course you have your fallback, which is Excel or paper-based process. But especially for us in the IT department, that's kind of our worst case scenario. That's the hardest to support, and it's oftentimes it's the most flexible, but it's very hard to support and to manage. Which brings us to really the topic at hand, which is the low-code application, and kind of where we've gone with that. And to be honest, the low-code application has been a very good investment for WL Plastics because it offers a lot of that flexibility that we're looking for. Kind of you default back to with Excel or paper-based process, but it gives you a taste of the custom developed application as well. So we can move forward here.
Yeah. So like we said, it was 2015, 2016.
Yeah, so we implemented our ERP back in the middle of the year in 2010, and we first started working with TrackVia in about 2015.
Yeah, and it was mainly around a gap around our quality process. Like I said, Brad was the one that was kind of were you the driver or?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, what happened is we identified a need in our quality system. The ERP did not have what we needed. It had some pieces of a quality management tool that we do utilize and still utilize to this day, but it doesn't quite meet our needs. But we were also not in the market for a full quality management system. It was a full-blown quality management system was well beyond our cost range for what we needed to do. And so we started looking into other options, which is how we kind of came across TrackVia, and then that's where we started with our quality system.
Yeah. So some of these decision points for us were initial, and some of these decision points are continuing for us. I mean, number one, I think Brad touched on it earlier with custom development, is just the flexibility. We get kind of that good happy medium between a custom application, but also an application out of the box. And then like Brad was talking about the cost, for us, a full-blown QMS or, we looked at maintenance packages. What are some of the other packages that the scheduling that we've looked at? We've looked at several different additions onto the SAP system, that would integrate with our particular ERP, and that the cost was not worth what we gained for it. Support is another big one for us. We are a very small department as compared to our business and maybe some, compared to other businesses for our size, and we run pretty lean. So all of our low code is maintained in-house here. The development, bug fix, everything that we do around TrackVia is on our time frame, meets our needs. You know, part of what Brad was talking about with custom application there is that, you know, part of what Brad was talking about was that it's all on somebody else's time frame and support and everything. And then the other thing is just the expandability. We started with just the quality application, and as we've gone through the process, TrackVia has grown with us, and we've been able to add different pieces on. And I guess that kind of goes back to the support thing is between some of the different custom built applications that I've done in the past, and as we've moved through some of the stuff, we've been able to move it over to a low code platform that other people can support, and that's not just reliant on one person or, you know, that one guy. That's been a huge help in our process. It allows me to every once in a while take vacation. Brad still doesn't let me off the chain too much, but it at least gives hope for another day.
There you go. And and as you also get to develop a lot of applications without paying additional fees, right? I mean, it's not based on per application. It's based on an overall, you know, per seat per person that's using whatever apps you develop, and that I imagine is also a real cost driver.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably really drive home the kind of the support side of things. You know, for what we like the most about TrackVia is not only, you know, like Jake mentioned, we have a very small team. In fact, you're looking at half of our IT department, you know, right now. So when it comes to supporting these applications that, you know, inevitably become, you know, somewhat mission critical, it's really important that we're able to react to any problems that, you know, that might come up. And the thing that's really nice for us about the, you know, the TrackVia platform, the low code platform, is it doesn't take a, you know, full on system, you know, developer. You don't have to have a database admin and a DevOps team and, you know, and a quality team to, you know, validate your application. You know, one or two of us can develop this, test it out, make sure it's all working, and you know, and adapt it as needed. And it's very, very simple for us to maintain, and it's very easy to pick up and learn. You don't have to, you know, you don't have to be up to date in programming languages or anything like that. It's all kind of what you see is what you get, drag and drop. It's really easy to maintain. And then Roger, to your point, you know, the other thing that's been really nice for us in, you know, I think maybe we're jumping ahead just a little bit here, but, you know, I guess if it's in this expandable bullet point here, is that as we learn more about TrackVia and what we can do, we do develop more apps. And oftentimes those apps may not go anywhere, but they definitely help us to refine the business process and help us to identify really what that gap is that we're trying to solve. So it gives us a nice kind of sandbox to play around with it without any additional cost, because as Roger mentioned, you know, we pay for a number of seats or a number of applications up front or as part of our ongoing subscription, and we can do whatever we want with them. So if, you know, tomorrow the quality app is not needed anymore, you know, we can decommission it and start working on something else. And it's all on our time frame and at our discretion.
Very cool.
So as we've gone through this process, there are a few conversations that we've had internally about adding, you know, I think that's with any external systems or any additional systems to your ERP, but, you know, they're just kind of things that take point here. And one of the big things is what is our system of record? We've had this conversation quite a few times. You know, at the end of the day, what is our source of truth for data? And for inventory, for master data, for financials, what am I missing?
Yeah, I mean, that encompasses it, financials, your payables, your receivables, your fixed assets, all that type of stuff. You know, just making sure that, you know, that you have that system of record and you have that identified where it, you know, where it is, what it is, and how you interact with it.
And then duplicating functions. There's some things that, you know, TrackVia may fit better for the process, some things that are in SAP. You know, we've had a few questions about how, you know, internally about where do we put this? Where does this live? Where does this function live? Do we do it in both? And that's been a continual battle every time that we do something, because we don't want to duplicate or triplicate work, whatever that function is. And then the other thing is synchronizing data, is just making sure that data is correct in both places. And part of it is you don't want to dual entry. Master data is something that we've talked about a bit here and there, making sure that when it's put in our ERP, going back to that system of record conversation, that it's also in TrackVia. So all the processes that run down from the TrackVia side, from the low code side, all the data is correct as it is in the system of record. And that's, making sure that everything's designed around make that data being consistent across all things, because it's not a good thing if our quality app is running different master data than what's in the system. So when you go back and forth, you don't want those discrepancies in there. And
right.
That brings us to our integrations, which is really the secret sauce, I think, to a lot of what's working through here. Reducing manual entry. There's always errors when you have manual entry and when you're entering things 8 different times. And this is also kind of where we introduce a little bit of automation. So Brad and I were talking about this just a little bit earlier about how I think our implementation really took off once we brought in the TrackVia integrations, which is powered by Workato at this time. There was Zapier a little bit, which is still a viable option, I believe. I think
yes.
Zapier still works with TrackVia, is still a connection, but with the Workato platform, you want to talk a little bit about kind of what we've seen?
Yeah, I mean, so as Jake's mentioning, throughout our journey, I think hopefully we've done an okay job here, kind of depicting how we've gone from where we were to kind of where we're at today. But we've definitely seen in our whole journey here, the Workato integration has been a big, I would say it really expanded our capabilities with the TrackVia platform. To really help us to, I guess, solve some of the points that were brought up in the previous slide about the other considerations, because those things, like Jake was talking about, the considerations of synchronization, system of record, a lot of that type of stuff has been solved by having a good integration, so we can create the master data in the ERP, it automatically synchronizes over to TrackVia, it's immediately available across all of our different applications. The way we have it structured, we have a master data app that serves the other applications, and it works very, very well for us. And so we've seen our use cases and our actual, user interaction take off once that integration got put into place. So that, I think the secret sauce part of it here is really kind of the right way to describe that. And and I think that's really one of the things that has shown to be of value for us, especially with TrackVia, is the openness of the platform to integrate with services like Workato, and it's made it easy there. And kind of going on to the other forms of integration here with the APIs and the microservices, we definitely utilize some of those as well. But again, I think the main thing for us is that all of this is available to us in this platform.
Yeah. Well, and it also helps with data cleanup as well. If we're seeing something either from an external system, whether it's the ERP or some other process, the integrations with the Workato is where, like I said, Workato is where we're at right now, primarily. But you're able to clean up that data. You're able to get rid of nulls. You're able to do substitutions. It's just making sure what's going into TrackVia as kind of your daily driver, or whatever that's doing, and it allows to enhance that. I will a shipping app is probably our biggest example. Everybody does shipping, or any manufacturing does shipping. You have to produce your product and then you have to get it out of there at some point. And everybody's shipping situations look a little bit different just based on your product. And that's really one thing where TrackVia helps. And with the integration, you're able to ingest the data from the ERP, from our SAP system, And then you're also able to add on additional components, whether you want to add on geolocation, if you want to do extra lookups. If there's anything in particular with a carrier, with a specific carrier, you know, maybe you're able to create a shipping label with UPS or FedEx, or, you know, there's a lot that you can do around that process with the integration. I mean, we've also done, you know, stuff with API. If you do have a custom programmed app somewhere in there, there is the API available as well. So you don't have to go through necessarily through a service like Workato. You know, like so the microservices kind of inject within the whole process. But I think going back to what you're saying, Brad, is like it's available. You know, it's not just a closed loop system where, okay, now I've created a sales order or a pick task or maintenance request or, you know, whatever it is, and now I've got to go and transpose it into the system. Like I said, it's very tightly integrated. It's very open. So you have the movement, and that's where some of the automations come in. That's where, you know, some of that, you know, data chain of custody kind of comes in. So yeah, like I said, integrations is really, I think, a lot of the big piece. The other thing is making sure information gets back to the ERP. Because if the ERP is your system of record, then you don't want to have that duplicate entry back, having to put that duplicate entry back into the system. So just make sure that loop is complete just make sure that loop is complete to make sure that your ERP is truly the system of record. So what you're doing over here is truly reflected in your system of record.
And I think just kind of one more point here, and this probably isn't really considered an integration so much, but one of the things that we really didn't talk too much about here is, you know, interacting with our systems, you know, through remote devices or mobile devices. That's actually been one thing that's been really nice about, you know, working with the apps that we've developed for TrackVia is you are able to utilize native features on mobile devices to enhance the process. So, you know, Jake brought up our shipping app is one of the examples of where we've used TrackVia to solve a gap. A lot of that happens out in our shipping yards. You know, so for WL Plastics, you know, some of the uniqueness for us comes in that the products that we make are very large. So we can't just, you know, box something up in the warehouse and send it out, you know, on a, you know, through UPS or drop it off at the, you know, the local drop box or anything like that. We have to arrange for flatbeds to come in to pick up our product and things like that. So a lot of our work is done out in our shipping yard, and it's a pretty natural transition for our guys to pick up an iPad and take it out there with them to complete part of the task. You know, they can use the camera to take a picture, to record, you know, how things look in the yard. We can use the integrated function to use the camera as a barcode scanner for, you know, locating the right pick tasks and pick, you know, products that are picked and staged in our yard. So there's a lot of, you know, just native, you know, again, I tend to think of them kind of as integrations to these mobile devices, but they're really kind of baked in at this point. You know, they're probably not considered a traditional integration, but, you know, but it works very well for us in that regard too.
Wow, that's great. You're using all aspects of that of the platform. That's awesome.
So I'd say just looking forward for us, you know, as we've kind of invested in this platform and the integrations, you know, just as a whole, you know, as business needs come up, whether it's, you know, related to the ERP or not, like I said, the low code TrackVia has become a daily driver for us. And I'd say when we're developing apps, one of the questions is how does that relate and how does that integrate back within our ERP? And, you know, kind of going back to closing the loop, you know, it's like, how can we make what we're doing out in TrackVia replicate back into our ERP? So we are trying to take away layers of that duplicate work that, I mean, seems inevitable, but yeah, at some point, how do we start peeling that away?
Yeah, and I think I mean, kind of in the looking forward, you know, kind of topic here, I think kind of what we touched on just a little bit in the past here is, I think as the, you know, kind of the IT manager and the IT department, it falls on us a lot of times to kind of become the business process expert and to, you know, make recommendations for software. I mean, it crosses our desk all the time. You know, we're looking at a new HR system, or we're looking at an online learning platform, you know, and we need to be, you know, we need to be brought in at some point to the process to the conversation in selecting that software, even though we might not be, the process experts. One of the things that's helped us tremendously with TrackVia is just kind of that sandbox that we can get in there and we can, quickly develop a simple workflow or process to kind of prove out what we're seeing from other applications. So whether or not we end up developing a custom app or anything like that, it gives us a tool to, to work with, and that's all, again, it's all just part of our, part of our subscription, part of our licensing. We have access to it, and it's something that we use quite a bit.
So it's kind of almost like your prototyping tool in some instances.
I guess that's probably good on that topic, but
Yeah. And so that's just been a lot of our journey with the low code, in the ERP side of it. And I guess at this point, we'll open up if there's any questions or anything as we wrap up.
Roger, I guess we can hand it to you real quick if there's anything you'd like us to follow up on, or any questions you had, and then like Jake said, we'll open it up to other questions.
Yeah, I heard that. Let me see. Throughout that conversation, you work with TrackVia and the ERP for maintenance, for quality control, for scheduling. I think we heard you kind of a little bit of a shipping kind of system and using the tools. It sounds like you've and obviously the workflows that go into it. It sounds like you've really utilized a lot of the platform and the Workato and the APIs and the you hit the Open API, you hit Workato, you hit Zephyr, just a lot of different tools that are built in. I appreciate you guys just sharing so much about how you've done this stuff, right? I think in one of our conversations, you said it's either going to be, a lot of times it's either in the ERP or it's TrackVia. There's not a lot of other needs, or not. There might be other needs, but that's right now kind of how things shake out for a team of 4 or 5 people, supporting 8 locations and hundreds of employees. So thank you. It was a great overview. I'm looking over. I don't see any questions popping into the system. We had some comments from another customer, one of our customers, saying, "Oh yeah, I can totally relate." He's going on and on about how they've done it at their flooring company. But no, this was awesome. I'm going to suggest to anybody on the phone or on the online that you take a minute. Don't forget to fill out surveys when they come through on whether this was good content for you. But also, you might consider, if you haven't played with TrackVia before, going to trackvia.com and clicking on the trial, and make sure that you have the play with it. And you'll see one of the new features we have is actually you've heard a lot of automation with, is it paper, is it Excel or whatever? Take a picture of a form. Right with your phone, right in that trial, and it will, it'll turn that paper form into a fully functioning app, complete with views and a dashboard and a form that you can use your phone to fill out. That's one of the new features that's there. Play with it, and I think that saves development time. It may not be what Jake and Brad do, but certainly. If I'm playing with the new trial, it's a fun feature to play with, and it turns gets you productive on a new app very, very quickly. All right, and then Nicole or Michelle, how do we? What's the next step here?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, absolutely. If you have a chance, please check out our free trial. But we also have some winners of our gift certificates on this webinar today. So Michael V, and I'm hoping I pronounced this name right, Gianluca R. We've added our attendees into that random software selector, and out of those 38 attendees today, we had those 2 as winners. So look for an email directly from us after this webinar, and you will get your free gift certificate. So thank you guys all for attending, and thank you, Jake and Brad. That was a great story. We totally enjoyed it. And thank you all for attending. I hope you got some valuable information out of this.
Yep. Thank you all.
All right.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.